Samuel 12, 1 through 11. The entire chapter revolves around the same subject, but I've divided the chapter into two sections because there's so many verses. Okay, this particular chapter is Samuel's address to Israel. Remember, at the close of the last chapter, King Saul had just won a battle over who? Nobody remembers. The Ammonites, right? The Ammonites. A king by the name of Nahash. And Saul had done well in that battle, hadn't he? He had been a great influencer of people, gathered an army together, and they went out with God's help, and they defeated the Ammonites. And he calls all the people back to where? Gibeah. Okay? He calls all the people back to Gibeah, and there he says, we are going to renew the kingdom. Who was with it? Who was a very important person who was with him? Samuel. Okay? Samuel. Remember, Samuel had been the prophet, priest, and judge in Israel. He was the one who had anointed Saul as king, and he was with Saul during this particular battle as an authority figure with this new king. And so now they're back at Gibeah. They're about to renew the kingdom, and Samuel has some things that he wants to say to the people. And that's what is in this particular chapter. 1 Samuel 12, 1 through 25 is really Samuel's address. I've only divided this first section into two parts for you to outline. So who's got a little bit of an outline of 1 Samuel chapter 12, 1 through 11? Kevin. The witness and the rejection. Good. Who else? Anybody? 2 points. So you don't have to talk much. All right, Miss Emily. Okay, Samuel cleared his name before the people. Their history with the Lord, sin, and return to God. Good. All right. Oh, Miss Carol, here we go. Okay, Samuel's farewell address. Remember your ancestry. That's good. Isn't it interesting how we read the same text and we come away with different ways to present it, but nobody's wrong, okay? Because it's all about what's going on inside those verses, okay? Larry, let's see if he cheated off Miss Emily. Samuel pronounced blameless. Ooh, okay, Israel's accountability. Good. I just divided mine into these sections. Number one, the affirmation of Samuel's character. And then secondly, the attestation to God's deliverance. Okay? Those are my two sections. That's what we're going to be talking about during the course of these questions today. Okay? Very, very interesting. What did Samuel do to hearken unto the voice of Israel? Gave them a king, yes. And Samuel said unto all Israel, behold, I have hearkened unto your voice, in that ye said unto me, and have made a king unto you. Now, let me ask you something. Who's involved in the selection of this king? All right, number one, God was involved in the selection. We've read about this is the Lord's choice in previous chapters, have we not? Who else is involved in this? Samuel is involved in this, right? He isn't the one who actually did the selection, but he is the one who God used to anoint the king and put him into the office. So it was he who took the matter to who? It was he who took this matter to God as well in the first place, was it not? So he's involved in this process. Who else is involved? Yeah, Israel themselves. They're the ones who demanded this king, desired this king, and did they want a certain kind of king? Yeah, and God, who knows the hearts of men, He gave them the king that they wanted, did He not? Okay, so we have several who are involved in this selection of this king. And who do you think is the predominant one involved? Yeah, folks, God. If God didn't want them to have a king, they'd have never had one. You know that? If God wanted to refuse it, he could have, could he not? Because he was their king prior to this, wasn't it? Okay, so but Samuel here says, I hearkened unto you and have made a king over you, because he was involved in part of the process. Now, 1 Samuel 12:2 reads as follows. And now behold, the king walketh before you, and I am old and gray-headed, and behold, my sons are with you, and I have walked before you from my childhood unto this day. Now, what's the purpose of that verse? He tells them first, I give you a king just like you want. And now he goes into verse 2. What's the purpose of verse 2? Why does he say these things to them? Okay, prepare them for transition. Okay. Remind them of the past. Do what? That he would still be with them. Okay. Anybody else? That he was faithful. He doesn't say that yet, does he? Okay. Folks, Samuel is about to have the people confirm some things about himself, right? Okay. Let me think. We have visitors here today, okay? And if we had a visitor stand up and ask us to confirm something about them, would we know much about them? Most likely? No. Don't know much about them, right? Because they haven't what? Haven't been here. They haven't lived in our midst, right? And so it might be very difficult for us to confirm anything about them. We might infer that they were faithful because they're here, right? But other than that, there's very little that we might know about them. Okay, well, here Samuel is about to stand before all Israel and have them confirm some things about him. And he reminds them, guess what? I've been around you a long, long, long time. When was he dropped off at the temple? As a child. He may have been as young as 3 or 4 years old. Folks, he's been running around that temple since he was a toddler. And now he says what? I am an old, gray-headed man. At least he had hair. Didn't he? Okay? And he says what? Yeah, my sons have walked before you as well. You know about what? You know about my family and my family's life. Right? Had his sons been good sons? No. He's had some trouble with these boys, hasn't he? And so, you know all there is to know about me, my family, and you also know that I'm an honorable leader because you asked for a king, and guess what? The king walks before you to this day. Right? I mean, he's right here. I can show you. I can point to you. Okay? So all he's trying to do is remind them that what he's asking them to do is not based upon just some flighty information. What he's asking them to do is based upon an entire lifespan, okay, that they have witnessed, that they have seen, and that they themselves can judge. Okay, so I find it interesting that he's, reminds them that I've been around a long time. Okay? What does Samuel ask the people to do before the Lord and before his anointed? Behold, here I am. Now watch this. Witness against me before the Lord and before his anointed. Yeah, that's what I want to do. Isn't it you? You want to go before all Israel and stand before them and say, here I am, witness against me. Let me tell you something, folks. That's a bold maneuver. Some people would say, that's foolish. I want all of you in here except Kathleen. That's a joke. Some got it. Okay? I'm going to ask for somebody to witness against me. This show ain't her. She can stay in that little classroom over there. Yes, sir. Blameless, yes. Absolutely. Leadership should be able to stand before people and be witnessed against, shouldn't it? So it's a... And notice that he says, I want you to do this before two people. I want you to do it before the Lord and before His anointed. Okay? Two of the highest positions in the nation of Israel, right? God and now His King. Okay? Very, very powerful term. I find it interesting that this is the very first time that the term Lord's anointed is used in Scripture. Okay? In the Hebrew, it would say this, Lord's Messiah. That's something. The kings were the Lord's Messiahs, the Lord's anointed ones. In the New Testament, they would be called the Lord's Christs, Christos, the anointed ones. You see, all kings of Israel were forerunners of who? Of Jesus Christ. Okay? They were pictures, or they were supposed to be pictures of the Christ. Okay? They were the anointed ones, so they were types, shadows of that which was to come. Some were good, and some were extremely evil. If you were to classify Saul up to this point, how would you refer to him? Good or bad? Man, he was a good man, was he not? Boy, he was a great man up to this time. The term witness. Anybody get a definition for that? Testify, okay? Speak accusation, okay? Strong says that it properly means to eye, to speak. Okay? Now think about putting those two together. Okay? I want you to testify. I want you to eyewitness. I want you to speak forth exactly what your eyes have seen about me. Folks, that's what a witness is. Now, if you haven't seen it, you can't what? You can't witness it. Can you? Okay, at least you're not supposed to. You can be a false witness, can't you? But if you don't see it, you're not supposed to speak. To answer, to respond, to testify as a witness. What 5 questions did he ask them? Number 1, whose ox have I taken? Number 2, yes, whose donkey have I taken? Number 3, who have I defrauded? Number 4, whom have I oppressed? And number 5, of whose hand have I received any bribe to blind mine eyes therewith? Wow. One wrote the following, did ever a minister of state in any part of the world resign his office with so much self-consciousness of integrity, backed with the universal approbation of the public? Man. You know, wouldn't it be amazing if every president had to stand before the entirety of the United States as they're leaving office and allow the people to give eyewitness testimony about that man? Now, folks, I want you to understand, all Israel was there. All Israel. All Israel had been called to the city of Gibeah. We're not talking just a few hundred. We're talking about thousands and thousands of people gathered on that particular day in order to assess the character of this particular man by the name of Samuel. That's pretty bold, isn't it? Pretty bold. Samuel had not, watch this, enriched himself with the goods of others. I haven't taken your oxen, I haven't taken your ass, and I have not defrauded anybody for mine own good. Okay? You see, oxen and donkeys, folks, those were possessions that were extremely valuable. Okay? And being in a position of judge and priest and prophet, could he have profited off the people? Yeah. So he just asked them, have I taken anything from you? Okay? So he hadn't done that. Number 2, he had not oppressed. That little word oppressed means broken into pieces or done violence to anyone. Here was a man who was harmless to people. Okay? He wasn't out to get anybody. He wasn't out to destroy anybody. A man of great character and a man of great respect for others. I've never oppressed anybody. And number 3, he had never perverted justice by taking bribes. Okay? So think about that. He's never enriched himself upon the people. He's never oppressed the people. And he has never, ever perverted justice through money or any other means. Is that a pretty good man? That's a pretty good man, isn't it? Unbelievable. Now notice this. If Samuel had taken anything wrongfully, what did he say he would do? Yes. And I will restore it. Could there be occasions that we may mess up and do something that we may not have really known we did? Now think about that. He's ready right now. If there's anybody in Israel who can show me where I've done something where I shouldn't have to you and I've defrauded you, guess what I'll do? I'll say, I'm sorry. Is that what he said? No. He said, I will restore it. Do we talk about the principle of restoration very often in the church? We don't talk about the principle of restoration very much, do we? And folks, restoration is a huge part of repentance. Okay? If I take $1,000, guess what I need to do? I need to give back $1,000. And maybe with interest, right? Because a person has lost money by my having it during that period of time when they could have had it, right? If I steal somebody's cat, I need to give them... Somebody said 2 cats. I give them the whole herd if they want it. I'm not going to take your cat, folks. I promise you. But are there some places... Well, let me ask you this. Are there some ways that we can't restore something when we repent? Yeah. Folks, if I take a life, guess what I can never do? I can never bring it back. Now think about this. If I ever destroy a man's character, even though I repent of that, is it hard to put that back together again? Yeah. Hard to do that. If I ever say bad words, filthy words, guess what I can never do? Can never put them back. Those words are going to live in the mouth of, in the mind of that person from now on, aren't they? Even though I say I'm sorry, even though I repent, even though I say I'll never do it again, those words are out there. There's sometimes that you can't make restitution. But Samuel said, if I've taken anything wrongfully, I will restore it. Okay? True or false? Some of the Israelites charged Samuel with taking things from them. False. And they said, Thou hast not defrauded us, nor oppressed us, neither hast thou taken aught of any man's hands. Now, I want you to think of the magnitude of his statement. Are you ready? He had been a prophet, priest, and judge for many years. Right? 3 or 4 years old, all the way up to being an old man. Never done anything that they could charge him with. He had come in contact with hundreds and thousands of Israelites. Had he not? The Bible tells us that every year he went on a circuit throughout Israel as their judge. I bet he had made hundreds and hundreds of judgments for the people. And not one had he ever oppressed anyone or defrauded anyone. Hundreds of judgments. Number 3. He was gathered before all the nation. Not just some of his friends, not his family. He was gathered before friends and opposition. Were there any in Israel who had opposed him? Yeah, those children of Belial had opposed him, but guess what? Not one of them opened their mouth to accuse him of anything. Not even his enemies could speak against him. Not one person accused him of any fashion. Man, not bad, is it? I'll tell you what, That's the way to live your life, folks. You know that? That's the way you live your life, so that nobody has accusation against you. Is that a tough way to live? Can be, can't it? Can be pretty tough, but old Samuel did it. Well, it makes you very respectful of the man. Who did Samuel say were witnesses to their answer that day? Yeah, the Lord is witness and His anointed. And he said unto them, the Lord is witness against you, and His anointed is witness this day, that ye have not found aught in my hand. And they answered, He is witness. Wow, folks. They're willing to sit before God and sign a statement that says what? Samuel is not guilty of anything. God is our witness. Is that pretty powerful? Let me tell you. Like I said, that's the way to live your life. One made this statement: with the declaration which the people had made concerning Samuel's judicial labors, they had, watch this, condemned themselves. Inasmuch as they had thereby acknowledged on oath that there was no grounds for their dissatisfaction with Samuel's administration, and consequently no well-founded reason for their request for a king. Pretty sly dog, wasn't he? He just convicted them of their evil. Pretty strong, isn't it? Makes it sound like he's just pretty bold and brazen to ask them this particular question. But now that they've given witness that he is totally innocent of any charges, nothing was wrong with his administration, and yet they desired a what? They desired a king. Why? Why? What evil have I done? What bad have I done? Pretty strong, isn't it? Pretty interesting. Who had the Lord advanced to bring Israel's fathers out of the land of Egypt? Yeah, Moses and Aaron. And Samuel said unto the people, It is the Lord that advanced Moses and Aaron, and that brought your fathers up out of the land of Egypt. That little word advanced means to make, to appoint, to ordain. Moses and Aaron were in their positions because who gave them those positions? God did. Wow. Folks, here's something we need to remember. All leadership is ordained by who? By God. Were there people who hated Moses and despised him because of his leadership? Yeah. Even who? Even his sister and even Aaron at one time. Who is he? He's just our brother. Who does he think he is? Korah, Dathan, and Abiram rose up in rebellion to the leadership. Better be careful. God ordains leaders. I find it interesting that they always go back to what? They always go back to the deliverance from where? Egypt. Folks, that was a history. Had that been hundreds of years ago? And we've already talked about this, haven't we? We're talking about hundreds of years. At least around, let's see, 500 years almost of history had already passed. And he takes them all the way back to 500 years ago. We don't want to live in the past. Yes, you do. God did. God remembered you a lot of things in the past. Past is important, isn't it? And it was to the nation of Israel. From thence they were taken and made a mighty nation. It was to God that Israel owed their national existence. God had redeemed them. It was He who had appointed worthy, faithful men to bring them out of bondage. Question: if God had done it in the past, why could He not continue to do it that day? You see? Who was it that decided they wanted a king? God? No. The people did. Folks, who chose Moses and Aaron? God did. And now, God's asking the question, isn't He? Through Samuel, why have you risen up and desired a king? When throughout the course of history, from Moses and Aaron on, I have always raised you up leaders. Pretty strong stuff. You see, in this speech, Samuel is convicting them of their sin hard. Okay? Pretty interesting stuff. Why do they need a king to fight their battles when God had delivered them in the past? Pretty interesting question. Now watch this, verse number 11. Now therefore, stand still. That ain't good. You know? When you're running around the house and your mama looks at you and says, boy, stand still. That ain't good. Right? It's about to get serious. Now notice what he says. That I may blank with you before the Lord. Reason with you. That little word reason means what? Anybody look it up? Judge. Who else? Pronounce sentence against. Oh boy, that's getting really bad. To plead. Yeah. To litigate. To enter into controversy. To plead. To have controversy together. This is not getting better. Okay? I've already convicted you that you have chosen a king over my good administration. I have already convicted you that you have chosen a king, even though God is the one who appoints leaders and always has in the past. Now let's talk. This ain't good. Not for Israel anyway. What did Samuel want to reason with them about? Yes. That I may reason with you before the Lord of all the righteous acts of the Lord, which He did to you and to your fathers. Folks, when Samuel came to God, told him that Israel wanted a king, what did God say? Yeah. They've not rejected you. They've rejected me, that I should not be a king over them. Now guess what Samuel does? Samuel comes and he's going to testify that God was a righteous king over the nation. And they had no reason and no cause to dethrone God and enthrone some human being as monarch over Israel. Whew. I don't think I want to be there that day. Righteous acts. Yes, sir.
Do you think a lot of those people who were there had forgotten about Egypt and all that God had done for them? And He was reminding them of those blessings?
I'm going to answer in 3 ways. Okay? Point number 1. Yes, there may have been some who, because of the length of time that had passed, that had forgotten. Okay? Number 2. No, they hadn't forgotten. And the reason I say that is because Israel trained their children in the law. And they were required to do that, folks. Okay? And they were diligent in that. This was a national people, was it not? And they were proud of their nationality. They were proud of their heritage. And that's why it was so easy to him to talk about their history to these people, because they what? They knew it. They knew it. Okay? 3rd point. Okay? Possibly they had intentionally forgotten what God had done for them. You know that? You gotta be kidding. Don't you hate bells? Righteous acts is an expression used to denote the benefits which Jehovah had conferred upon His people as being the results of His covenant fidelity, or as acts which attested the righteousness of the Lord in the fulfillment of the covenant grace which He had promised to His people. Folks, when did God make this people a mighty nation? At the foot of Mount Sinai, did He not? I have chosen you, He said. And he had always been loyal to His covenant. Even when they sinned, even when they were in rebellion, even when He could have thrown up His hands and totally destroyed them, guess what He did? He maintained His righteousness before them and kept them as His people. Folks, this people isn't even worthy of God, and yet He's kept them. And what have they done to him? Rejected him. Wow. Watch this. This is kind of on the line that Larry was asking, the lesson. Folks, we often know about the past, but we forget the significance of it. Okay? Jesus died on the cross. We all know that. Folks, let me tell you something. That event's significant. You know that? It's not just, a man died on the cross. That's significant. And we just kind of forget that, don't we? Well, he died on the cross. And that's what happened to Israel. This can be true of events as much as big events as much as small. We need to be reminded from time to time, folks, and I believe that's why God gave us the what? The Lord's Supper, for one thing, to remind us of what? Not just the event that he died. Oh no. He did. We need to understand the significance of that death when we think of this table right here. Don't we? He reminded them of two deliverances. I'll go through this just real quickly. Okay? He reminded them of God's deliverance from Egypt. And he also reminded them of God's deliverance from who? Yeah, the enemy. Okay? Of the past. And each time God did what? I'm not going through the questions, guys. I'm just talking, okay? We only got about a minute before the bell rings. Every time he what? Rose up deliverers on behalf of the people. He rose up Moses and Aaron when they were in Egypt. He rose up judges when they were oppressed of the enemy. Folks, every time they needed delivering, what had God done? He delivered them. And what did they do? Wow. They rebelled against God. It's unbelievable. Man. True or false? God delivered them on every side and Israel dwelled safely. Every side, folks. Okay? Notice that God delivers. He delivers on every side and He brings safety to the nation. He did it over and over and over and over again. Why do you need a what? Why do you need a king? Now, Israel's about to speak. Okay? He's gone through this first part of his address. Now Israel's about to speak. And I wonder what they're going to say. Well, that's next week. So if you're visiting, come on back and be with us. We'll take you